What's up YouTube? Today I'm going to tell you how to make an amber accord. So in my previous videos I've covered quite a few ingredients, and now I wanted to get onto accords. So by the end of this video you're going to know firstly a simple method of how to make accords, and secondly you're going to have the formula for the amber accord that I made in this video. So let's get to it. Now the first stage to making the accord obviously is actually deciding on which ingredients are going to go in it. So amber, I chose this because it's a very classic abstract accord that is used in perfumery, and it's based around the combination of labdanum and vanillin. So labdanum I talked about in a previous video. It's from the Mediterranean plant Cistus labdanum, and it's this extract that you get which smells very unique, and vanillin is the main constituent chemical in vanilla. It's like the main odor character chemical, and when you combine that vanillin with the labdanum you get this fantasy accord called an amber. Oh, and one thing you've got to understand about amber is it's actually quite a common cause for confusion, and that's because there's two different types of amber. So you have the amber accord that I'm talking about, which is this classical abstract accord, and then you also have, well, there's kind of three types almost. There's also the amber which is fossilized tree resin, which is something you find in kind of the Baltics like Latvia and Lithuania quite commonly. This stuff doesn't actually smell at all, because normally a tree resin smells kind of foresty, and then it gives off its volatile constituents and gets fossilized in the ground, and then that's when you get the amber back out, so it doesn't smell by that point. So that's completely different. But then you've also got this ambergris, I don't know how you say it, but this stuff is basically whale vomit, and you find this on the beach. If you're lucky, you can bag yourself thousands of pounds if you find a nice little lump, and that is classically used in perfumery. So before we had synthetic ambers, basically it was kind of noticed that this ambery effect is given by ambergris or the labdanum, and it was later found that there's this chemical called ambroxan, which you can buy as a synthetic molecule if you want, so you don't have to get any of these naturals, and the ambroxan is found in both the labdanum and the ambergris. So if you didn't want to use any naturals at all, you could make an amber accord with no naturals. However, back in the day when that was all they had, you could make this kind of amber scent from either ambergris or labdanum. Right, so I did some research on the internet and I looked at what kind of different things are in amber accords, and what I found to be common across all of the formulas is the labdanum, the vanillin, and also most of them actually had some benzoin as well, which is a very sweet smelling tree resin. Anyway, so I looked at Mandy Aftel's book called Essence and Alchemy, and that's got quite a basic formula, which is 6 drops of vanilla, 120 drops of benzoin, and 30 drops of labdanum. And that Roth ratio is basically copied in a lot of formulas you find online, so I thought, that's a good place to start. Though a little disclaimer here, I don't advocate that you measure out in drops, and that's because a drop is not a good unit of measurement, because it can change depending on how fast you pipette something or how much pressure you apply to the pipette. Yeah, a drop can change according to the size of the hole in your pipette. And the other thing with drops is it's measuring by volume instead of weight, and there's some kind of chemistry reasons that basically just say that that's worse, but I won't go into it. Yeah, if you've got to measure in drops, for a beginner, it's fine, but if you become more advanced, then you're going to want to measure in weight. So after this accord that I tried, I evaluated it and I found, it smells kind of what I would expect for an amber, quite sweet maybe, but yeah, it's fine. I wasn't so sure about the benzoin, and that's possibly because my benzoin is it's a really cheap one, to be honest, so maybe the quality is not super nice. So I went back after this to the main key combination of the vanillin and the labdanum. So I thought I'm going to do some binary tests, so that's just 2 things. So I kept the proportion, which is 1 part vanillin to 5 parts labdanum, but then I wanted to experiment a bit. So what I used were some vanilla analogues. So I tried vanillin, ethyl vanillin, and methyl diantylis. And if you look at the chemical structure of these, they're all very close to vanilla. Ethyl vanillin is a much sweeter version of vanilla. I find that is a bit more closer to kind of like white chocolate and marshmallows, whereas vanillin's more like the classic vanilla cake kind of vanilla. And then methyl diantylis is basically halfway between vanillin and eugenol, if you look at it. And eugenol is effectively the smell of cloves. So this is a bit more of a spicy kind of take on it, but that aroma chemical can be used in florals quite well as well. So, I just wanted to see what would happen. What I found was that the trial with the ethyl vanillin was definitely too sweet, and the one with the vanillin was fine. It was balanced. So it kind of made me believe that ratio of 1 to 5 was kind of the right place to be. And then the one with the methyl diantylis was actually really nice. It kind of smelled like cinnamon, just a realistic scent of a cinnamon bark. So I thought that was good. So I wanted to continue that into the next iteration. So then for the next attempt, I wanted to go the next step and start building the accord up a bit. So I decided to stick with the 1 to 5 vanillin to labdanum because it seemed to be working quite well as a base. And then I decided to add one extra component to that, and I tried 4 different things. So I first tried the methyl diantylis. I added just a little bit, so half of what the vanillin was, because I didn't want to go too far on those vanilla chemicals, because I didn't want to make it too strong vanilla or too sweet. And then I tried coumarine, which is it's like a thing that's, I don't know how to describe it. It smells a bit like hay, like kind of quite golden, I don't know, a bit like Play-Doh as well. It's weird, but that's a very common aroma chemical. So I tried a bit of that because I just felt it would fit. And then I tried some ambroxan, so that was the amber chemical that I was talking about earlier. And I also tried some bergamot because a lot of people doing the amber accords added some bergamot. And I just wanted to see how that would go because I thought it could work quite well, and it's well known that bergamot generally works well with everything. So the results were that first blend with the methyl diantylis, again, it was really nice, smelled a bit like cinnamon, so I thought, yeah, this is a good direction to go. The one with the coumarin, I think that coumarin was way too strong, but I did kind of like what it was adding. I think it was going in the right direction, so I decided to bring the coumarin itself forward to the next trial, but I was going to make it a bit weaker. And then with the ambroxan, it just felt like it was much too strong, too much of that amber core chemical, and I thought, well, it doesn't need it, it's already got amber in, so if it doesn't smell right, just chuck it. And then finally the bergamot, this, at the level I tried it, I could barely really detect it at all, so I did want to try this. I did want to see what this was like, so I took it over to the next trial. But yeah, this one, all I found out was it wasn't strong enough. And then I went to my final trials. So I could have done a load more iterations, right? But at this point, I actually kind of got to a point that I quite liked, so I decided to stop. But it has to be said that you could go on with different trials basically as long as you wanted to. You're probably going to come to a point of diminishing returns eventually, which is a good thing because that shows you're kind of getting to your optimal accord. But yeah, so my final trials were, I used the labdanum and the vanillin and the half dose of the methyl diantylis, and then I added some coumarin, one part, but I used the next kind of order of magnitude down in the concentration. So I diluted the coumarin another step before adding it to my mixture. And then I also repeated that trial again, but then in the second one added bergamot, but added more bergamot than last time. And what I found with those was The final one with the bergamot in was really nice. Like that was a good attempt I found at an amber accord. Like I liked it. Basically the bergamot comes through at the beginning, and that gives it like kind of like an orangey Earl Grey tea kind of a little kind of note, but not too much to be just smelling of that. And it blends really well with the sweetness and the amberiness of the rest of the accord. And what that also does is kind of covers up the vanillin, and that's a good thing, because at the start, so the first 20 minutes or so, I find vanillin has this very harsh, weird note to it, and after a long time it becomes much nicer and sweeter. I don't know why that happens, but the bergamot, because it's a top note or top to mid note, covers that up quite well, and then that's kind of gone by the time you get to the mid/base note region, which is when the labdanum and the vanillin really start to shine through. And I felt the coumarin in that was just about the right level. It just added something small, and that methyl diantylis in the background, it was a really nice way of just adding that kind of spicy oriental cinnamon vibe without making it so different that it wasn't an amber accord anymore. So I tried that on the skin as well, because the other thing you've got to remember is that evaluations on the paper, on the scent strips, don't always translate super well to the skin, and that's because different things can take longer relatively, or not so long relatively, to evaporate. So sometimes you have to adjust the formula for the skin, and I found this formula transferred fairly well. I do always find that vanillin gets a bit sweeter on the skin. So one thing maybe I could have done is just decreased it a little bit. But it's mostly fine. I can always go back and work on this accord in the future time if I want to. So basically, yeah, that was it. Like, this is the formula. I thought it was cool. I'll probably go back to it in a few months and maybe change it some more. Sometimes with these things, you just gotta let them sit and come back to it with a fresh mind. So yeah, that was that. So yeah, that's it. You can basically do exactly the same method with any accord, especially even if you don't know what it might be. A good first step is just to do some research online. There are forums like Bass Notes you can go and search, and Google as well. And then some of the more common things like amber do appear in books. And then yeah, you can just find the ingredients. I always say, like, know the ingredients really well, because that means when you start blending, you're actually going to understand properly what things are doing without it being a mess and you just don't know what's going on. So yeah, if you find kind of roughly what you think might be the right ingredients, you then lay them all out and smell them separately to kind of refresh your memory, and then usually you can cut kind of half of them and then work out exactly how you're going to go about start making the accord, and always start with just maybe 2 or maybe 3 things, and try to balance those out first and make your kind of core, and then after that start to embellish it just a little bit with extra things, kind of to tweak it, but that's more finishing it off rather than completely changing it too much. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this kind of thing, please leave me a comment or like it, because then I can know what kind of things to keep doing for future videos. And yeah, have a great day. See you.